What if the ultimate goal in life wasn't to, build this massive reserve of wealth and knowledge and comfort,
Right.
but what if the goal was actually to arrive at your deathbed completely and utterly bankrupt?
Which is, I mean, that's quite a thought.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, let's unpack this because we spend so much of our time trying to accumulate things, right?
Absolutely.
We want the padded savings account, the secure job, the pristine reputation. But today, we are doing a deep dive into this really fascinating essay. It's titled Live Full, Die Empty.
Yeah, and it just completely flips that whole accumulation mindset on its head.
It totally does. And the mission of our deep dive today for you listening is to take this truly wild roster of thinkers that the essay pulls together.
It is a crazy list.
It is. I mean, we're talking about sports psychologist Bob Rotella, management legend Peter Drucker, all the way to novelist Leo Tolstoy.
And Jerry Seinfeld.
Yes, incredibly. Comedian Jerry Seinfeld. And we're going to figure out what they all have in common because they are all pointing toward this cohesive blueprint for a life that is inwardly rich, outwardly purposeful, and just entirely spent by the very end.
What's fascinating here is how the essay's core premise challenges our basic human instincts, about self-preservation.
Right.
Because when you hear die empty, it sounds almost morbid at first glance.
Yeah, a little bit.
But when you actually look at how these thinkers frame it,
Yeah.
it is actually a philosophy of total aliveness.
I love that. Total aliveness because I like to think of your potential like a battery. Most of us go through life trying to keep that battery at 100%, right?
Always on the chart.
Exactly. We leave it on the charger. We play it safe to preserve its lifespan. Like, we really don't want to degrade the lithium ion.
Yeah.
But this essay argues that the entire point of the battery, like, the only reason it exists is to drain it completely doing something that actually matters.
Exactly. But there is a massive catch here. Because if you take a really high-capacity battery and you just short-circuit,
It explodes.
right, it explodes. It needs a proper channel. So to safely and effectively discharge all that potential over a lifetime, you first need the structural integrity to handle the current.
You need the right hardware.
Yes. And in human terms, that structural integrity is your inner life. It's your character.
And this is where the essay hits us with a quote from Reverend William A. Sutton that honestly, it made me do a double take.
It's a heavy one.
It really is. He says, "We cannot be humble except by enduring humiliation."
And I mean, at first glance, that feels almost toxic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Humiliation.
Yeah.
We've spent our whole lives trying to avoid that.
It is incredibly counterintuitive because, society generally treats humility as this sort of cosmetic choice.
Right.
We think of it as a quiet virtue, just a box we check. We
Yeah.
believe we can just wake up one morning, look in the mirror, and decide, I am going to be deferential and modest today.
Right, like ordering it off a menu. Yeah, I'll have a side of humility with my morning coffee, please. Exactly.
Yeah.
But Sutton is diagnosing a much harder truth about human psychology here.
Yeah.
Genuine humility isn't chosen. It is forged.
Forged.
Think about the mechanics of it. To be truly humble, you have to be stripped of your illusions about your own superiority.
Oof.
And that is what humiliation actually is.
Yeah.
It is the painful destruction of the ego. It's the residue of surviving being broken down, losing the status or the certainty you thought you possessed,
Right.
and then making the active, conscious choice to rise from that experience with a deeper, quieter strength, rather than just, turning bitter and defensive.
So character isn't a factory setting. It's the scar tissue that forms after you've been tested.
Yes.
That actually connects perfectly to what Bob Rotella, the sports psychologist, talks about in the essay.
Mm-hmm.
He points out that all great champions are strong on the inside and that they actively relish the emotional challenges of the game.
Right. They don't hide from it.
Exactly. They don't just tolerate the pressure, they crave the friction.
Because they understand that inner strength requires that friction to grow. And this idea gets even sharper when the essay brings in the philosopher Immanuel Kant and the novelist Leo Tolstoy.
Oh, this part was wild.
It is. In his Calendar of Wisdom, Tolstoy makes this incredible, somewhat jarring statement. He says, "The kindness of a dove is not virtue. A dove is not more virtuous than an eagle. Virtue begins only when there is an effort."
Okay, hold on. I want to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Doesn't society constantly reinforce the idea that some people are just naturally born good?
Oh, all the time.
Like, we celebrate people who are naturally gentle, but
Yeah.
it sounds like Tolstoy is arguing that a person who desperately wants to yell, whose blood is boiling but who bites their tongue,
Right.
that person is actually more virtuous than someone who just never felt angry in the first place.
That is precisely what he's arguing. And the psychology behind it is so vital.
How so?
Well, being gentle when it costs you absolutely nothing isn't a moral achievement. It's just your biological temperament. You were just a dove being a dove. True virtue, at least in Tolstoy's framework, requires resistance.
It requires the effort.
Exactly. It is the active, agonizing choice to behave well when every single instinct in your body and maybe your entire environment is conspiring to make you behave badly.
Wow. So the effort is the actual virtue. If there's no struggle, there is no growth. You are literally just coasting on your factory setting.
Exactly. If you want a strong casing for your battery, you have to subject it to heat and pressure. All the outer results of your life, the success, the impact, the things people actually see, they are all downstream of this inner cultivation.
Okay, so if virtue and character require the friction of overcoming our base instincts, then it makes complete sense that the mind itself needs a resistance training program too.
Absolutely.
You've got the hardware sorted, but now you need the software, which, transitions us into the essay's next major theme,
Yeah.
the absolute necessity of continuous learning.
And this is where we really have to look at Peter Drucker's concept of the knowledge society. Drucker points out a massive, fundamental shift in human history.
Right.
For centuries, if you were a craftsman, say, a blacksmith or a carpenter,
Right.
you finished your apprenticeship by the time you were, 18 or 19 years old?
Yeah, pretty young.
And that was it. You essentially knew everything you needed to know to execute your trade for the next 50 years.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Drucker argues that in the modern world, knowledge has completely replaced physical property and manual labor as the primary capital in our society.
Exactly.
So to go back to our technology analogy, think of your brain like a smartphone operating system. In the blacksmith days, you bought the phone, and it just worked forever.
Right. No updates needed.
Yeah. But Drucker is saying that today, if you stop downloading the updates, the continuous learning, you don't just stay the same. You literally become a bricked device.
That's a great way to put it.
You become obsolete and completely incompatible with the world around you.
It is a brilliant way to visualize it because it highlights the causality.
Yeah.
Why do people become obsolete? Because the environment updates, and they do not.
Yeah.
And the stakes here aren't just personal. Drucker argues they are civilizational. Education can no longer be a phase of life. It has to be a lifelong habit.
But getting older doesn't just automatically make you wiser, right? I mean, we all know people who have lived a long time but are, still running on software from 3 decades ago.
Oh, definitely. And that is a trap the essay explicitly warns against. Tolstoy draws on the ancient wisdom of the Greek lawmaker Solon, noting that you must seek to learn constantly while you live. You cannot just wait in the faith that old age by itself will bring wisdom.
Right. Age isn't a substitute for learning.
Exactly. Age brings experience, yes, but without deliberate reflection and new inputs, that experience just calcifies into dogma. Deliberate reflection is what actually produces wisdom.
And Cal Newport brings this into a really visceral reality in the text. He says, reading and writing are push-ups and pull-ups for your brain.
I love that quote.
It's so good because I think a lot of people treat reading as this cozy leisure activity. Something you do on a rainy Sunday with a cup of tea.
Right, very passive.
Exactly. But Newport is reframing it as the literal exercise regimen of a serious mind. If you don't do the reps, the mind goes soft.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, there is a fascinating, almost protective power to this kind of mental exercise.
Oh, like the Truman story?
Yes. The essay shares this incredible anecdote from Ryan Holiday about a young Harry Truman. Truman was once asked if he ever got into trouble as a boy, running around the neighborhood, breaking windows or whatever.
Just normal kid stuff.
Right. And his response was that he very seldom did because he was simply too busy. By the time he was 14 years old, he had read all 3,000 books in his local library.
Wait. 3,000 books by age 14?
Yes.
That's not just a hobby, that's an obsession?
It is staggering. But look at the psychological mechanism at play here. When asked about the neighborhood troublemakers, Truman basically said, sure, they were around, but he was too busy reading to be bad.
Wow.
What this proves is that a genuine deep absorption in the life of the mind actively removes the appetite for the petty destructiveness that usually fills the vacuum of boredom.
That makes so much sense. If your brain is constantly processing high-stakes ideas like history, epic narratives, complex philosophies, You don't need to manufacture cheap drama in the real world to feel stimulated.
Exactly.
The mental pull-ups are keeping you occupied. You are completely inoculated against your own worst tendencies because your mental bandwidth is already maxed out with quality data.
The mind abhors a vacuum. If you don't fill it with deliberate challenges, it will fill itself with petty grievances.
Okay, but let's pivot here for a second because I can hear people listening to this and thinking, great, I'll just go read 3,000 books and become a Stoic philosopher.
Right.
But you can do all the mental push-ups you want. You can have the most updated operating system in the world. But if all that knowledge just stays trapped inside your head, it is ultimately useless.
Absolutely useless.
You haven't actually drained any of your battery's potential into the real world. This essay makes it crystal clear that continuous learning has to translate into continuous action.
The transition from the mind to the hands, yes. And the text highlights a very simple but psychologically profound linguistic shift proposed by Cameron and B.J. Arnett.
Oh, this is fascinating.
It really is. They suggest that we have to move away from the passive, backward-facing vocabulary of coulda, shoulda, woulda,
Right.
and adopt the active, forward-facing vocabulary of can, shall, will.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. When I first read that, my immediate reaction was, is this just toxic positivity?
Yeah, it sounds a bit like it.
Like, how does changing a single verb tense actually rewire your brain? It sounds a bit like an empty self-help affirmation.
It sounds simple, but the mechanics of language literally dictate how we perceive our own agency. Yes. The coulda, shoulda grammar is the language of a victim. It is the language of regret. When you speak that way, your brain is actively cataloging what didn't happen and anchoring you in a past you cannot change. And that keeps you stagnant.
Oh, wow.
But the can, shall, will grammar is the grammar of action and accountability. By changing the word, you are forcing your brain to commit to what is going to happen, physically shifting your cognitive orientation from stagnation to forward movement.
So it's really about taking ownership.
Exactly.
Which reminds me of that comic story the essay shares from Anthony DeMello.
Oh, the tailor.
Yes, there is this tailor who keeps failing to deliver his master's shirt. Day after day, the master asks for it, and the tailor blames it on the will of God.
Right.
He just keeps shrugging and saying, God willing, it will be done tomorrow. And finally, the master gets totally fed up and asks how long it will take if he just leaves God out of it.
It's hilarious. But we can laugh at the tailor while DeMello is diagnosing a very serious human pathology there.
Oh, absolutely.
Invoking external forces, whether you call it the will of God, the economy, your boss, or just bad luck, as the reason for your own inaction is an incredibly common defense mechanism.
It completely protects our ego.
It does. But the undeniable truth of the story is that the will of God did not make the tailor late. The tailor made the tailor late.
We absolutely love to outsource our accountability.
We really do.
And Florence Scovel Shinn takes this even further with a concept that I think is going to hit close to home for a lot of people. She points out a brutal paradox. If a person asks for success but prepares for failure, they're going to get exactly what they prepared for.
Yep.
Think about your own life for a second, as you listen to this. How many times have you told your friends you're going to apply for that massive promotion, but you purposefully put off updating your resume?
Oh, all the time.
Deep down, you are mentally preparing to be rejected, so you self-sabotage to soften the blow.
That is the exact psychological mechanism. We prepare for failure because if we give 100% effort and still fail, it is devastating to our ego. Right. But if we only give 50% by not updating the resume, by procrastinating, we have a built-in excuse. Shinn's answer to this self-sabotage is that intention has to be enacted, not merely felt. You cannot just desire an outcome in your head while your physical actions undermine it.
So the physical preparation, like actually sitting down and updating the resume, is the manifestation of the intent. It forces your brain to align with your goal.
Precisely. Furthermore, the essay notes that the greatest remedy for the anxiety and worry that causes that self-sabotage is to get completely occupied in doing something productive. Work, in this philosophical framing, is not just about economics or paying the bills. It is literal medicine for an anxious mind.
That is profound.
When you are fully engaged in the grammar of action, there is no bandwidth left for the coulda, shoulda, woulda static.
Lose yourself in action or wither in despair. That is a pretty stark ultimatum.
It really is.
But it brings up a really crucial follow-up question. Let's say you've made the shift. You've upgraded your hardware, you're downloading the mental software updates, you've moved from coulda to will, and you are taking action.
Okay.
How do you know if you're actually heading in the right direction? Are you draining your battery on the right things? This brings us to how the essay redefines success itself. Earl Nightingale offers a definition that completely dismantled my usual thinking.
Nightingale's definition is profound in its simplicity. He states, the progressive realization of a worthy ideal.
Which is a massive paradigm shift. So what does this all mean? Because society constantly tells us that success is a specific coordinate on a map, right?
Always.
It's a six-figure salary, it's a corner office, it's a blue check mark next to your name. But Nightingale is arguing that success is a mode of moving. It is a direction, not a destination.
Let's unpack the implications of that. Under the standard societal definition, a billionaire is successful simply because they have $1 billion.
But under Nightingale's definition, if that billionaire is just drifting through life, hoarding their wealth without any larger purpose, they are actually a failure.
Exactly.
They have stopped moving progressively. Meanwhile, a broke medical student who is pulling all-nighters, actively working toward the noble goal of becoming a doctor, is already a massive success, even though their bank account is completely empty.
That is exactly the radical redefinition the essay is pointing toward. If you know where you are going, and you are actively taking steps toward it, you have already achieved success in the present moment.
I love that.
And Jerry Seinfeld, of all people, adds a very sharp observation to this dynamic. He notes, if your work is unfulfilling, the money will be too.
That's so true. You just end up taking that unfulfilling money and spending it on distractions, trying to buy the fulfillment the money was supposed to give you in the first place.
Yeah.
It is a completely rigged game.
It is. The external rewards can never compensate for an internal absence of meaning. Which is why Thomas Paine's view of purpose is so essential to this blueprint.
What did you say again?
Paine wrote, "The world is my country. All mankind are my brothers, and to do good is my religion." True purpose, at its largest and most sustainable scale, isn't about personal accumulation. It has to be oriented outward toward others.
And there is a deeper, almost spiritual current running beneath all this practical advice about learning and taking action. You see it across totally different cultures and eras in this text.
Definitely.
Tolstoy states it very plainly. He says, life is constant change. It ought to consist of weakening the material and increasing the spiritual side of our existence.
This raises an important question about how we evaluate our own conduct. The spiritual imperative here, and the essay also brings in insights from the Quran to support this, isn't about withdrawing from the world to meditate in a cave.
Right.
It's entirely about action. The Quran suggests that humanity is purposely divided into different nations and tribes as a test. And the ultimate metric of that test is whether we choose to extend kindness and do good works across those differences.
That's beautiful.
The spiritual life isn't just a feeling. It is expressed in how we act toward people who are not like us.
Which requires vulnerability. It requires friction. And Tolstoy delivers what might be the hardest truth of the whole deep dive. He says, if you want to save your soul, forget about your comfort.
That is the ultimate challenge right there.
Yeah.
Think back to everything we've discussed. Growth, forged character, rigorous learning, genuine service.
None of it is easy.
Exactly. None of these things can flourish in the greenhouse of comfort. They all require exposure to the elements. They require a willingness to stretch yourself far beyond what feels easy or safe.
So bringing this all together, we have looked at an incredibly wide orbit of thinkers today, but they are all building the exact same machine.
They really are.
You've got Reverend Sutton reminding us that the hardware, our character and humility, is forged through the heat of humiliation.
Right.
You've got Peter Drucker and Cal Newport telling us to constantly update our mental software because knowledge is the new capital, and Harry Truman proving that a busy mind starves our destructive tendencies. You have Anthony DeMello and Florence Scovel Shinn warning us to stop self-sabotaging and blaming the universe for our own inaction. And finally, you have Earl Nightingale showing us that success is simply aiming all of that machinery progressively toward a worthy ideal.
And while they're all speaking from wildly different disciplines, sports psychology, 19th century literature, modern management, they all ultimately orbit one central mechanism.
Continuous outward-facing growth.
Exactly. Humility feeds that growth by giving us an honest assessment of our flaws. Action feeds it because mere intention is just wishing. Purpose feeds it by giving our effort a direction. And the spiritual dimension ensures that as we drain our potential, we are powering something truly meaningful.
Which brings us fully back to the title and the ultimate takeaway: live full, die empty.
Yeah.
It sounds like a catchy bumper sticker, but when you understand the mechanics behind it, it is actually the most demanding instruction you could possibly receive. It means arriving at the very end of your life without a safe, untouched reserve of potential sitting in your battery. It means knowing that you didn't withhold anything essential out of fear and that you spent yourself completely on things that actually mattered.
It is a philosophy that demands you leave nothing on the table.
Yeah.
And the only logical next step, after internalizing the mechanics of this, is the simplest and hardest instruction of all.
Which is,
You have to start.
you have to start draining the battery.
Right.
Now. Which leaves us with one final thought for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day, taking all these thinkers with you. If your life were to end tomorrow and you were forced to do a full audit of your personal potential account, what is the one specific talent, the one hard truth, or the one act of kindness that you are currently hoarding purely in the name of comfort? And how can you go out and spend it today?